Hey, everybody, welcome back to LettermenRow.com. I am Jeremy Birmingham. This is Talking More Stuff with Spencer Holbrook and myself, brought to you by Buyers Auto. And Spencer, this is a big one, man. Out of the blue, it seems, but I think it's kind of been percolating for a while now. There's some discussion that Quinn Ewers, the country's top-ranked quarterback in the class of 2022, is leaning towards skipping his senior season of high school at South Lake Carroll outside of Dallas and instead enrolling at Ohio State right away. That was first reported on Wednesday afternoon by Pete Thamel of Yahoo Sports. And let's just dive in, man. Like, Spencer, is that a good thing for Ohio State or a bad thing as you see it?
I think this is a disaster for Ohio State, and it might come off a little harsh, but you thought Ryan Day had this thing figured out when it comes to CJ Stroud probably the starter this year. Maybe Kyle McCord stepping in and starting when CJ Stroud leaves, or Quinn Ewers taking over when CJ Stroud leaves. And now you have two quarterbacks in the class of 2020. You could potentially have two quarterbacks in the class of 2021. And all of a sudden you look at it and you could say, well, originally we thought that maybe we could keep that. If you're Ohio State, you look at it and say, maybe we could keep three quarterbacks on the roster no matter what at all times. Now you're looking at it as, okay, at least two of these guys, you just have to look at it. Two of these guys are probably going to be gone at some point before their Ohio State career is over. You don't know who's going to be the starter now. You throw a wrench into a quarterback room that seemed to be shaking itself out, and now you've got a whole new player in this, and it's not just a player into this competition. It's a five-star, all-world, number one overall, 1.000 prospect in Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, I mean, I think a few things are important to say. Number one, it seems highly unlikely that Quinn Ewers, even if he did get on campus before the season began, that he would be in a position to really compete right away for the starting job. I just don't see that. To be the quarterback at Ohio State takes a lot. I know how good Quinn Ewers is. I know how good he can be. But that is a major, major task. And I don't know necessarily if that's something that even a player of his tremendous talent is going to be able to make an impact that quickly. But clearly, the impact is not necessarily on the roster or on the field for this coming season because, as you said, CJ Stroud now has been in the program for more than a year. It seems like it's leaning towards him being the starter. The question is what happens if Stroud is the starter, or if Kyle McCord is the starter, or if Jack Miller is the starter. What happens to the other two guys that don't become the starter for Ohio State? And if you're talking about four players that all have freshman eligibility, that is a roster management nightmare. And I can't think of a word other than that to say. Ryan Day seemed to have an idea here of how this was going to, play out and how they had this set. You figure that you get Stroud maybe for 2 years, and then you get a battle between Ewers and McCord, and then you balance it out from there. But now you have to look at this from the perspective of this coming season. You have to assume that at least two of the four guys that are in the room that don't win the job, or two of the three that don't win the job, would end up transferring. Then you have to think about who in the class of 2022, now that the Buckeyes are would be way behind in recruiting that class, who would want to join that, knowing that you'd have to play behind either Stroud and Ewers, or Ewers and McCord, or Ewers and Miller, or at least two of those four, maybe more. It becomes a very bizarre game of shuffle the deck.
But I guess if there's a silver lining in this, and maybe I was being too harsh because, again, we're reacting to this in every sense of the word, rapid reaction, because this is news to everybody. If Ohio State, let's think about it this way. Quinn Ewers does not win the job this year. I think that's pretty safe to say he will not win the job this year. If he does, I'll eat my words, but I would be under the assumption he will not win the job this year. If he does not win the job this year, he will probably take a red shirt. Just play him in 4 games, red shirt, learn the offense. CJ Stroud could play one more year. In theory, Quinn Ewers could play 1 year after that now in the 2023 season, go to the NFL, and really the 2022 quarterback, it might not be as hard to sell because you only have to be on the roster for 2 years, then you can be the starter rather than be in this logjam. I mean, when you look at it that way, Quinn Ewers is probably going to be gone after 3 years no matter what because he's that special of a player. So really, it doesn't create a future logjam as much as right now, in the now, and maybe in 2022 more than 2021, you really see some some odd things going on in that quarterback room. But beyond that, Quinn Ewers being on campus a year early might actually help Ohio State when it comes to recruiting 2022, 23, and 24 quarterbacks, because it just means he's going to be off campus a year earlier.
Well, it certainly changes how they recruit in 23. That would be a no doubter. At this point, I think Ohio State was pretty content on staying local in 23, or maybe not local necessarily, but understanding that they weren't going to be in a position to shoot for the proverbial stars, I guess, in that class because of the way the roster was shaking out. But now if Quinn does enroll early, now you have a situation where in the class of 2022, as you said, you're going to have to get someone. So maybe that's a transfer from somewhere else. Maybe it's not, but the top 25, 35, the top 35 quarterbacks in the class of 2022 are all committed elsewhere already. So that's a major hill to climb for Ohio State. To tell anyone in that top 35 group, hey, maybe in 2 years you're going to have a much better opportunity to play than you would have thought. Maybe that changes a lot of the dynamics, and you have to ask yourself from a big picture perspective if that's good or bad for Ohio State. But you can't ask yourself that about if it's good or bad for Quinn Ewers, because clearly it's good for him if he has an opportunity to get to college and start working towards getting himself comfortable in the Ohio State program, getting himself comfortable with Ryan Day's offense, finding a way to take advantage of the name, image, and likeness opportunities that a player of his stature and his unique marketing capability is going to be worth. I mean, we're talking a high school kid that is having programs and businesses around the country offering him seven figures for his face and name, image, and likeness. How do you turn that down if you're him? But, our job is to try to look at it from the big picture view, Spencer, and see if it's good for all the parties involved. And I guess it just leads to way more questions than answers.
I agree. And there are a lot of questions left to be, we just talked to Ryan Day last week for an hour and 15 minutes. And it's clear that he had to have an idea that this may have been coming. And he seemed pretty chill about what was going on in his quarterback room. So you think, you got to trust Ryan Day because he's earned the trust of Ohio State fans, of the coaches around him, the players, that he's going to do the right things in this and make the right moves that put Ohio State in position for success now and in the future. And if that means bringing Quinn Ewers in a year early and making the competition spiced up a little bit more for the next 4 weeks, then so be it. And if Quinn Ewers wants in the program, Ryan Day has a responsibility to not tell him no, because he's a generational prospect. And if you tell him no, don't come because we're already set at quarterback come next year, he's probably just going to go somewhere else. And so, there are 129 other FBS programs that would take him with open arms right now. And so I think this is a delicate thing for Ohio State to have to weather if it happens. Again, this is all a report by Pete Thamel that he is leaning toward doing this. There were quotes in there, so it's obvious that it is serious, but it is a lean right now. It's not official. But the ramifications for this could reverberate through Ohio State, through the walls of the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for years to come.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Day at Big Ten Media Day said that in 5 years we may not recognize college football, and I think this is some of the things that he's alluding to. There are just going to be these machinations that we can't really fully grasp, and the way that it's going to change what we do, and the way that the game is covered, and the way that these kids have decisions to make. And it's not like you don't want to say Ohio State's stuck between a rock and a hard place here because, like, oh, which of your 4 or 5-star quarterbacks do you play? But it is a precarious position now that Ryan Day finds himself in, because as you said, if by some chance this concept was floated by the Ewers family and not Ohio State, how do you tell them we'd rather you not, knowing full well that anyone else in the country is going to say, hey, Quinn, you can come here right now, take full advantage of that name, image, and likeness, and be a starter. I mean, there's a lot of schools in the country where Quinn Ewers right now would walk in and be the starter. He just happened to choose a school in Ohio State that he knew there was going to be some talent in front of him. But you look at Oklahoma State, pick Texas Tech, anywhere in the country, anywhere else. I mean, except for Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, where else is Quinn Ewers not going to be a legitimate option as a starting quarterback? And there's not many places. So it says something about Quinn, I think, from a maturity standpoint, that him and his family have realized that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So you can't begrudge them for it, but you certainly look at it from an Ohio State perspective and go, man, this is about to get real interesting.
And the one thing that I'll leave with Berm as we try to soak all this in right now is, the money is always going to be there for Quinn Ewers. He's going to be the number one player in the country. He's going to be the 5-star do-it-all quarterback. He's going to get endorsement deals when he gets to college, whether that's this year or next year. He now has a decision to make. And I really think Ohio State has every bit of leverage in every recruiting battle it could possibly want because it's Ohio State. Ohio State, to me, seems a little powerless in this because it's Quinn Ewers' decision. If he wants to come to Ohio State early, he's coming to Ohio State early. And what that means for the quarterback room is something that needs to be decided later, because Quinn Ewers coming to Ohio State is seismic for the sport, no matter when it happens, whether it's this year, next year, 3 years from now. Whenever that happens, it's huge for the sport. And so I think it's a huge decision for Quinn Ewers. The money's always going to be there. You always ask me what I would do if I was a student athlete getting ready to enroll at Ohio State. I have no idea. Like, this is one of those ones where you just have no clue what a guy is thinking. There's a lot of money on the table. There's a lot of decisions to make. And having a 5-star quarterback is never a bad thing for Ohio State.
The decision is Quinn's alone and Quinn's family to make, but it is sort of forced on them by the state of Texas not allowing the high school athletes to make profits on their name, image, and likeness. Other states around the country are allowing that, and it just all goes back to this change, this evolution that's happening in amateur sports. There's going to be national legislation on these things at some point, and it is going to trickle all the way down into high school. And Quinn Ewers is going to be the face of the Ohio State football program at some point. It could be a lot earlier than we thought. Spencer Holbrook and myself, Jeremy Birmingham, will continue to stay on top of that as it unfolds. But that's all for now. Thanks for checking back with us. We are talking more stuff. We're rapidly reacting, or we're doing whatever you want. Brought to you by Buyers Auto. I'm Jeremy Birmingham. That's Spencer Holbrook. Have a good one.